This book is called Jacks Around the World. It's written by Mary D. Langford and illustrated by Karen Dugan. Most kids love playing games. Do you like playing games? Well, I do, and I picked this book because it's called Jacks Around the World, which is a very simple game. You know, some games, like Jacks, are universal. If a game is universal, it just means the game or a version of the game is played all over the world. Let's look at the cover of the book. What do you notice about the kids in the game they are playing? Do you notice where they're playing the game? What materials are they using to play the game? How many players do you guess can play their game? I'm going to start by reading the author's introduction. She lets you know where she got the idea for the book and also how she learned about all the different ways that you can play jacks. She says, playing jacks. What fun I've had writing this book, playing detective, attempting to answer questions about a game I played as a child. Who invented jacks? Where else is it played? How old is the game? And where did its name originate? Researching these questions gave me a wonderful chance to learn about other people and their country's traditions. In a taxi cab in Washington, D.C., I asked the driver where he lived as a young boy. He replied that he was from Somalia, which led to my discovery of McCreary, a game that the driver had played many years ago in Africa. New immigrants, perhaps seeking relief from tragedies in their homeland of Somalia, found their way to Irving, Texas, and were responsive to my questions about the game. On an author visit to a school in Italy, I met 3 Japanese girls who demonstrated how they played otadama. Intriguingly, I could find no source for the origin of the game's first call-out of osala, or plate. While in another speaking engagement, I met an American woman and her family who had lived in Singapore. From a school report completed by the daughter, I gained information on the country. I was then introduced to their Chinese friend who had played 5 stones as a child. Books, magazines, and artwork provided further information, and from them I learned that jacks, like most games, is not a new invention, but a game with many variations on an ancient theme. Some people believe that jacks were invented by Palamedes, a nobleman during the Trojan War who later taught the game to Greek soldiers. Others believe Asia, home of ancient civilizations, was the birthplace of jacks. A marble frieze dating from the 1st century AD was found in the ruins of Pompeii. This frieze shows women playing the game of jacks. In ancient Rome, the game was... The author goes on to explain that in ancient Rome, the game was called tally. In China, it was known as Jop-Ji, and the original name of the game in the English language may have been Chack-Stones. C-H-A-C-K. Chack-Stones, as it was called in England. This was probably taken from the English word for pebble, which is chuck. Today, most English-speaking children call the game jacks, though it is also referred to as jackstones, dibs, knucklebones, or 5 stones. The rules may have changed slightly throughout history, or they may differ from country to country, but the game is basically the same. Pieces of bone, seeds, small rocks, or today, pronged metal or plastic pieces, represent the men or the jacks of the game. In most games, an object, which is either a ball or a stone, is tossed in the air. As the object is tossed, the pieces on the ground are picked up, first 1 at a time, then 2 at a time, and so on, before the airborne object falls to the ground or after one bounce of the ball. The game sounds very simple. However, the skill needed to toss, catch, and move objects requires practice. The challenge of becoming a champion is awaiting you. All right, reading about the fundamentals of play for jacks. Before you sample the games in this book, try onesies through Sixsies, the most basic version of jacks. You throw 6 jacks onto the ground. Now you have to use the same hand throughout the game, toss the ball into the air, pick up 1 jack, then catch the ball before it bounces twice. Drop the jack to one side, or you can transfer it to your other hand. Then you toss the ball again and go on until you make a mistake or capture all 6 jacks. This is called onesies. Now in twosies, the jacks are picked up 2 at a time. Remember to use the same hand for tossing, picking up the jacks, and catching the ball. For threesies, pick up the jacks 3 at a time. And for foursies, pick up 4 jacks. For fivesies, 5 jacks. For sixsies, 6 jacks. Pick up the 6 jacks all at once. Now if you make a mistake at any time, back you go to onesies. In directions for individual games, I've avoided boring repetition by assuming that you and your friends understand certain fundamentals for games in the Jacks family. Unless the directions state otherwise, keep these in mind. You must use only one hand for basic movements. You have to keep your body in the same spot, no crawling around on the floor. Touch only the piece or the pieces that you're picking up, so you can't push the others out of the way. And then pick up the correct number of pieces, like onesies pick up 1, twosies pick up 2, you get it. Allow the ball to bounce only once, and then catch a non-bouncing object before it hits the ground. If that's how you play in the rules, they'll let you know. Now, if you make a mistake on any of these, you lose your turn. Now, when it's your turn again, you begin at the point of the game where you made your mistake. So if you did onesies fine and twosies fine, and then you made a mistake on threesies, then you lose your turn, someone else plays, and when it comes back to you, you start again with threesies. The most common way to decide who goes first is to place the game pieces or the jacks on the back of one of your hands, and then toss the jacks up in the air and catch them. Each player completes the toss, and the one who catches the greatest number goes first. If 2 players tie, they toss again. Now, an easier variation is to use both hands and toss your jacks from the palms, so toss them up to the backs of your hands. And a more difficult variation is to toss from the palm of one hand to the back of the same hand. Now, the tip for you is don't throw too high and spread your fingers slightly to maximize the catching area. So that's together, that's spreading them a lot, and that's slightly. Another favorite way to determine who plays first is stone, scissors, paper. Have you guys heard of rock, paper, scissors? Same thing. It originated in Asia, and in all variations of the game, 2 or 3 players raise their fists, moving them up and down as they count or chant the words for each of the 3 elements. The 3rd time the fist is raised, all players make a sign with their hand for either fist, scissors, or paper. So they say stone, scissors, paper, and then you have to show one and see. And then remember, stone can break scissors, scissors cut paper, and paper can cover stone. The person with the strongest sign plays first. If all players make the same sign, well, the game is just played again. Now, in the United States, players chant 1, 2, 3. It might be fun to try the Chinese chant, ching, chang, pok, or the Japanese words, ishi, hashi, hasimi, kami, which means stone, scissors, paper. The best way to get better at any Jacks game is to, I bet you guessed, practice. These are just a few techniques that will help you improve your game. Try to space the jacks when you toss them. If you're picking up by ones, you'll want to space the jacks farther apart. If you're picking up 11 pieces, you'd want the jacks all close together. Make sure you position yourself comfortably so you aren't too far away from the pieces or too close. Find a tossing style that makes the ball or the stone go straight up and down, so you will always know where your hand should be for catching. The idea is to get the ball or the stone high enough to give you enough time to pick up the jacks, but not so high that you lose control of it. So good luck. So I am hoping that Jacks is making you think of a game that you like to play, or a variation of this game that maybe you've played before. There's so many things I love about it that you don't have to have the special jacks like the little plastic pieces or metal pieces in a ball that you can buy in a store. You can use anything you have that's similar, just like they talked about in the book. And I'm hoping this has got you curious to try and play the first version, which is the onesies, right? Onesies through Sixsies. So that's what I'll have you do. Now go ahead and get yourself in a good mindset, and then I'll tell you what materials you need, remind you of the rules to play, and get you going. Can't wait to see how it goes.